Good morning, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Got a special series today. Really excited about this one. I've really enjoyed building stuff in HubSpot with Claude, and now I get a chance to do it with some wonderful people who are also willing to figure this out. Joined by Ryan and Trisha today. How are you folks doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's a
Thanks so much,
pleasure.
Chris. Yeah,
Yes.
I have been more impeded. I've had more failures than success with everything that I've tried to do um, with AI and HubSpot so far. And I'm mostly working on the technology side. Like on the content side, there's definitely some wins there, but I have been struggling, and I'm really excited to see how other people are coming at it, and if you're encountering some of the same hurdles that I am.
You've come to the right place. Hopefully we can help if that's the goal of this series, right? Like I think there's a lot of understanding of opportunity, but tons of confusion on how to actually get there.
How do you just get it done?
Yeah. And I've had also some successes and failures um and I'm gonna talk through that at the moment. But I'd love for you guys to just give a quick background on why you'd even join a show like this.
Trisha, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I started out as a financial analyst way back when, and I was one of the first web analysts ever. And the data side of marketing has always been just like at my core. I can't understand a concept until I can see the numbers and understand how it's actually working. And it feels like my dad is a bona fide rocket scientist, and I wonder if like that's his genetics coming into me somehow. But I can't understand a problem until I see the numbers. Um, and beyond numbers, data. So there's so much that can be done with AI to enrich data and help us understand better what is happening, who we're talking to, and the possibilities are just so exciting, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you for joining today. How about you, Ryan?
Oh man, so I joined today. I'm heavily invested in all things AI these days, and with the new MCP servers, with OpenAI's like agent, Perplexity releasing their new Comet browser, I'm starting to rethink how I, as a person and as an agency looking to grow in the HubSpot ecosystem, how can I start to leverage these tools for better outcomes for my clients?
Yes. I'm excited. And first, I'm going to share like what the overall plan is here. This will be a series that goes as long as it needs to. We've got some value first infrastructure to build, and we're going to do it from scratch. And so created this framework just to show you how difficult it is to not fall into the traps of SaaS and the way we've been doing things forever. As I was talking to Ryan and Trisha, and Riley will be joining us in future episodes. It started from a place of like, okay, what's the build like going to be, right? And because I did all this work with Claude to do some data model mapping for how I want things to be built out in HubSpot in support of value first. As a collective, as a community, as a productized, consulting offering in many cases. And as I bring others in, Ryan being one of the first ones, I'm like, I already got it. Like, here's the doc. I'm just gonna give it to you, and you're gonna go build it, and it's gonna be fine. So, yeah, maybe you'll use some expertise here and there, and none of the why. like behind what we're trying to accomplish and why these objects exist in these ways. Like we might have a little bit here and there, but even within this chat of Claude, I had to say, like, I don't want to use custom objects. I'm trying not to use custom objects, trying not to customize HubSpot. So it brought me back to the place like, okay, maybe I need to set up the strategy instead of jumping right into the build, like just how it should work when we're, signed up and partnering with customers. But the goal is to go from scratch here in a sandbox environment. And I always love showing HubSpot because often I just need to read the words on the screen and that tells the story, right? We're trying to innovate and experiment in a testing environment. Like I can't say it any better way than that. We're trying to do that with the help of Claude, from the data model to in support of the business processes, right? We're also part of the challenge that I'm hoping to take on is this lack of standardization, right, in SaaS, especially when it comes to integrating with other systems and how we build our data models. What we're going to run into as we do this, because when we create Sandbox, we're not, I think we can do this, but we're not going to rely on the existing like production infrastructure, right? Because we want to start from scratch. And what's going to happen when we start from scratch, build up, and then it runs into the existing like production environment? Are we renaming everything in production? How are we handling renaming? Because what we see now is that people name things the way that they've always have, and now we have everybody building in silos and trying to address longstanding issues while naming the same, NetSuite line item object in HubSpot about 10 different things, right? Because that's the way the business has always named it, and we're not going to think about it beyond that. So I expect to run into some of those challenges. And just the expected challenge and opportunity of working with AI, multiple people, to have Claude build stuff. Ryan's going to show off Comet, the browser, like browser-based activity, like doing things through the UI. So we've got somebody going through API and MCP backend, somebody going through front end, but both with AI. How does that come together? But starting from a place of like these ideals that we want to build as we build out the whole platform, right? We're not about systems of ultimate control. Like we're trying to enable all of the users to serve customers in the way that they know they need to, and you as a business leader know you need to. You as an admin, you as a sales leader, whichever way, right? We've got to give our people better environments and move on from the days of, which was just a few years ago, like, well, it doesn't matter if everybody hates the system. That's the system we got to use. Like, that's not okay. Trying to connect things naturally, not force so much artificial integration. You might hear me say things like SaaS is one big workaround sometimes as we go through this, which is why I'm going to force us to lean on AI sometimes. But even there, as we go through that, you will see, since AI is trained on human stuff, it sometimes wants to do some of that workaround stuff itself without even asking sometimes. That was an early lesson. Creating the space to evolve. Like, this is not a one and done system. We've been saying that for years, but we still treat onboardings and implementations as if it's like a 90-day project. We'll be done. Never works out. and we gotta, somebody's eating the scope, somebody's eating the extra cost, or somebody chooses not to, and then we don't end up with systems that people want to use, right? Not using AI to replace things that we shouldn't be asking it to replace. Like, got a lot of humans doing great things. How do we get everybody working together? We're hoping to show that, like what that should look like real time on the show. democratizing knowledge and ability throughout the team, right? Not having so much specialization everywhere, which gets us into the situation where we're working with multiple systems, and which consultant do we trust, right? Like, they know more about their system, but they know nothing about HubSpot. Like, we run into that every day right now. And like the customers in the middle, like, okay, everybody's making sense right now, but which one, like, who's right and who do we go with? Trying to avoid that natural organization. So can we get to a place where it's a customer team, right? A customer facing team, and not a sales team and a service team and a customer success team and a marketing team. Because when you don't have to hand it off every 2 seconds, the experience gets a lot better and a lot easier to administrate and manage. And measurement. This is a challenge, I'll be honest. Like, all of the stuff that we talk about have related to tried and true KPIs. A lot of those KPIs are simply KPIs because they're easy to measure. But in this case, we want to try and understand value creation, like internally and externally throughout the process. So having said that, before we dive in, thoughts on what comes to mind as I just described that new paradigm for you two?
I had one question, which was related to the sandbox, and I don't want to send this off the rails here, but you mentioned starting with a clean slate. I would have started with the production, like a copy of the production environment, because my mind goes to whatever we're building right now. We want to make sure that it has a head start. We know it's going to work with what's already there. So briefly, tell me about why you're clean slating this.
As I was discussing this scope with Ryan, that was one of his first questions. It's like, because I was asking him for help to build this out in our HubSpot portal. And what happens when names are different for things? Are we just renaming the object? Are we adjusting the documentation? Can we even rename the object? Like, are we going to have to manage object IDs? Like, those kinds of things. And I think that's where those things can create decisions that might not be in the best interest of like the strategy you're trying to achieve.
Okay.
Right? Because then there's a bunch of custom objects in my portal right now. Right? I've downloaded the event happily, got all those objects, had some other people working in there, and there really hasn't been a whole. It's been a makeshift data model up to this point, which is most of what we see in the wild. So things like, oh, we had this marketing leader. Yeah, he left last year, but he did things this way. Now the sales leader's in charge, and they created this object and this lead status, and nothing makes any sense. So come in and re-implement Sales Hub for us. And it's like, okay, we often try to go in platform, and we'll audit. But any hope of creating alignment has to take a step back and say, like, what would it be like if the stuff didn't already exist, right? And that's actually, Value First came from that, was me asking Claude, like, give me your AI native take on what if sales wasn't a thing, marketing, like what if we talk about the problems of silos all the time, but then act powerless to like do anything about it. So I was like, okay, if you had to design an organization like from scratch and marketing wasn't a thing, sales thing, like how would you design it? And it came up with this constellation approach where like people, it's kind of what happens at Profoundly and now value first, where people that are good at the same things are better at working together, right? While being adjacent to the other people that are good at those things. And it's almost like full funnel account reps, like in an organization where they don't have like marketing and sales and service barriers. There's always on the front line, but then they will work with those other teams. And it just, I knew I was on the right track when the first pass that Claude came back with. I had no idea like what it was talking about, right? So I was like, all right, we've started from truly scratch. But then it was about, okay, how do we translate this, in a way that doesn't just call everything marketing, sales, and service still, but is practical, because I still haven't found a way to like explain the constellation concept very well. But when you think about just value flow, if you can identify where that is going, where it needs to go, and always prioritize it, it starts to create this situation where the work goes where it needs to go because that's the best person in that moment, or that's the best tool in that moment to use to create value in that way. So probably more than you bargained for when you asked that question, but I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it was.
So so with that foundation, this chat, right, started with like all the documents that are in this project, right? And a couple of the important ones are one of my common problems when working with humans and AI is they think HubSpot is only contacts, companies, and deals and no other objects. So the chances of having a comprehensive data model, understanding, and conversation are very low, right? So in a lot of my cloud projects, I have a HubSpot native object overview, which has all of the objects that I think are important for the customer data model, right? So all the Commerce Hub objects, object library objects, marketing events, things like that. So it's drawing from that. And it's very hard. I've had a hard time getting any AI system to come back with that list. The only one I've successfully done it with, which better be the one, looks like it will be moving forward, is Breeze. Like you can ask Breeze now which objects exist in HubSpot, and it will list like 25 objects. The other important document is HubSpot Portal Manifesto that is all about configuration over customization, right? And I think this has also been a challenge for HubSpot, the ecosystem, as it goes out into the like 250,000 customers, we're getting into enterprise level. Like you run into IT teams and developers, configuration and customization mean very different things, right? To the point where customization, if that's not in the scope and not in our contract, here's another $100,000 to do that thing. We told you we could do it, but it's a customized thing that is not in the scope. And we talk about HubSpot customization. When most people say that, they mean configuration, right? Which is using all of the native tooling in HubSpot, like to create a CRM card, for example. Like if there's no dev, if there's no like code, and you can just go to the CRM card library, create a new card, put it on the record. That's configuration of records, right? Most people talk about that as customization because we are customizing the experience of the user. But that's the most common way I've seen people go over scope and over budget, or out of scope and over budget when doing integrations with other systems. And it's almost like the rest of the free world outside of the ecosystem understands what customization means to them. And it's just a translation barrier. And I've learned that the hard way, like trying to help people with NetSuite and not understanding that that is the viewpoint of, you know, the system administrators, the IT projects, like all that stuff, which is really HubSpot has successfully stayed away from, I think, because the system has been so easy to use and easy to manage. But that relates to like things like a sandbox not being able to push, you know, to production for a long time. Like all those expectations outside the ecosystem are now coming in because HubSpot has grown enough. So when working with those kinds of contractors, well, any contractor, like making a point, like I want to configure first, right? I don't want a customized workaround for everything, right? So focusing on the native objects. And if you don't know what the native objects are, you go immediately to custom objects, right? And custom objects, while great, don't have what HubSpot calls like superpowers, right? Contacts and companies and deals and tickets and now services, right? Like if you use the services object, it's automatically like built into the customer success workspace, right? And they're building for that. So starting with that principle, I won't go into too much more detail, but that's kind of the baseline for how we started this. So it's very much not just the AI, you know, normal training. And the approach is like has very much been in the works from my expertise for like several years of just being in HubSpot since 2017 and seeing all the gaps. I've always been a full platform kind of person, right? So it's never been a marketing tool to me. So trying to find ways to help others see it that way in a standardized way so that we don't all build separately, right? Like any good project start, establishing current state with everybody involved. Are we all aligned, right? So the first ask was please review the HubSpot native objects document in the knowledge base, and then audit my HubSpot portal with your MCP access, right? So it comes in, gets user details, gets the schemas, the objects, gives me a portal audit summary, right? And this is like so important, right? This is why it's one of the first things that a lot of people are doing with AI is like, if I would have kept down that road with Ryan and I'm a customer worried about costs and effort, I'm saying things like, oh, you don't need to audit. Like you can just go build the workflow. Like we don't have time. Like, and that usually doesn't go well, right? If we don't understand the context of the HubSpot portal, bad things happen. More money is lost. People get frustrated, and then we see the stories that we see every day. But I'm curious for you guys, seeing this portal audit summary, like what comes to mind?
I think it's just incredible how quickly you can understand a portal with now MCP as a tool to do so. Like that is just revolutionary in the space, I think. And, you know, reiterating your point of context about the business and kind of what I've seen in the real world of organization A is interfacing with HubSpot sales. And there's a lot of context that goes in and what hubs you need to purchase and how each hub can benefit your business and all of the amazing things that it can do. That typically gets handed off to some partner, right? Implementer, onboarding specialist, and they do that 90-day promise of implementation. But from HubSpot to the sales rep to the contract to the person doing the implementation, all of the context gets lost. And very few times do I ever see, I try to do this with my clients, but it's let's start at the top again of like, were the people that I'm talking to now in the organization involved with any of the sales conversations that took place earlier? So it's always going to be to have that conversation again, recollect the context, reevaluate what's the portal at, because there's also could be a 6-month time period from when conversation started and implementation began. Things changed in that entire time period. If you had an admin that was doing stuff, they were in the middle of implementing some post-sale process, things have changed, and the ability to get contextual information of current state in a matter of minutes is tremendous. And this is only going to get better, right? We only have access to a few functions of the Claude MCP, right? And it's like knowing that it is still limited in its capabilities and what it can do, but it's still better than clicking around manually to explore an account, and tons of value here.
Yeah, and I should highlight that part you mentioned, Ryan, like, so now we have 2 ways, even within Claude. I mean, 3, technically. There's 2 ways in the front end user interface that we're looking at here, which is the new HubSpot connector that we all heard about this week.
Yep.
Has these 5 scopes or 5 functions, right? And what's been around for a while is the HubSpot MCP, which has, this is as much of the scope that you can get right now. So the first one I showed is just for like, go look at the portal at a high level, right? And start to understand data. This is one where you can see create property, update property. We can actually do stuff inside of the portal with this one. I think this is one of the places you've had some success, Trisha. Understanding portals.
Yeah, I wasn't able, I just finished up an audit last week, and I was asking to hook their portal up to ChatGPT so that I could do more of this, and I wasn't able to get it before I did the audit work. So I did a lot of like exporting and then importing into ChatGPT, which still was, way better than doing all of the work manually. To your point earlier, something you said about, that you still need humans involved in this, because this is where the analysis and strategy is from our human brains. But, an audit is a slog. You're slogging through a lot of detailed information and collecting it. And oftentimes you might even be, if a human is in charge of doing that, and it's a long thing that you're doing a deep dive for, you might be capturing the data incorrectly too. But this is not what I want. I want to be spending my time on is the deep research, or you or anybody else. It's boring. It's a slog. I want to spend my time like figuring out the solution. And by having more of the data right here at hand, I can spend more time and like starting to go build that solution. The one thing I wonder about though is that sometimes there is like a learning that comes from just experiencing all the things that are wrong. Like I don't know if there's a tie here, but they say that if you write down something, you're more likely to remember it than if you just read it. It's this, like, I kind of also wonder if there's a piece where you will more fully understand what kind of solutions company needs by having actually like gotten so dirty. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's fair. That's why I think like the mindset of collaborating with AI is super important, instead of just thinking it's a tool to delegate stuff to. Because like it could very easily be just go do that, and then not paying attention really to what it's doing and say, okay, that's done, right? But the back and forth is really where I see the value of AI, and that whether it's forcing you to type or forcing you to talk out loud or, you know, forcing you to go click on buttons in HubSpot, that's as close as we're going to get. At the moment, I think there's stuff like the Remarkable tablet and that kind of stuff. But I'm a little on the extreme side that I don't even think, like, why are we teaching handwriting at this point? Because everything is display based, and kids may never need to. They might not ever need to write anything. So, just to give you an idea of where my biases are. But I do believe that research, and I've heard it lots of times. Like, I'm a big fan of Full Focus Planner and that whole system, and just the writing. I mean, anything that forces you to recreate the thing, like, is usually forcing you to think about it a little bit. At least for me, I've seen people not have to think about it so much, but that's not been my experience.
I think the win comes, as you said, from the back and forth, where it's like, I love the idea of being able to have AI surface some sort of high level stuff here, and then being able to ask a question. Well, what about? Or tell me more about, or like, are you seeing any of this in this? I think that I love that too.
Yeah. And that's like a lot of the prep I talked about. Like, if you're a consultant or a builder or whatever, and you're not asking about why they do things the way they do things in HubSpot, if I hadn't done that here, he probably doesn't touch orders or services, right? Like, I just would have gotten a contacts, companies, and deals audit, like, almost guaranteed, right? But because I set it up, like, go review the documents, this one specifically, that way I know, to look for these objects. Because even if it's coming back with a list of all the objects, the regular training data is that people use HubSpot for contacts, companies, and deals. So it thinks that's what I want when I say, please audit my HubSpot without any other context, right? So that extra context, we're going to keep coming back to that specifically. Business context is everything. No AI I've seen yet automatically has that. You have to build that in yourself. And when you hear these stories of agents starting to replace people, most of those use cases, that business had to do a significant amount of work to get those agents ready to replace a human, right? And all that work is context and, like, documentation of processes and all that stuff. So got some key observations here: strengths, opportunities, value first framework alignment, right? So there's a lot of, like, business strategy documentation in this project too. So it's like somebody who's on my team and they're hired in to execute on behalf of value first. So they have all the context they need to understand the HubSpot portal from that perspective.
I don't think you can understate the amount of work that you put into, like, the pre-work of the portal that you want to build and the processes that you want to support and the types of customers you're selling to. And I thought that was really insightful, because if you are handing it off to an implementer like myself, understanding the business is everything. And the document that you shared with me on how to implement, like, was so full of that context, I felt, to where I could take that document, understand your goals and objectives, and model out all of the things pretty well to support the business that you want to grow with on HubSpot.
Yep.
Did you include that in the initial documentation like a document that said, here is what's important to this business. Keep this in mind as you're doing this audit.
So if we look here, like, so in the knowledge base, we have a lot of the contextual, say, thought leadership content related to the business, which happens to also be like teaching, like how we want to do a project like this throughout like all the trap and manifesto language. We've got 4 documents outlining business leaders, customer teams, product teams, and operations teams as the target audience. You've got a glossary, messaging, voice, a couple of value path documents, which is the way I think about the life cycle stages of HubSpot. The collective, like the business strategy documents, basically are in here, including some specific product strategy documents, and like the business plan overall. So yeah, a lot of stuff in here.
Okay, but getting to the nuts and bolts of how it conducted this audit, in your audit prompt, like I'm trying to get to how did you actually do this? I didn't see this stuff referenced.
So Claude, if you keep it at 6% right now,
yeah,
it's supposed to, like, this is the knowledge it's referencing when you start the chat.
Okay.
Right. I specifically call out that one document of the native object HubSpot, the native HubSpot object list. Because
but that doesn't mean, but it's also referencing the whole library, even though you called out the one. It's referencing everything.
Yep. And I always like to think of this like, just if I were tasking a human with this, like, yeah, maybe there's a big binder like on the desk and you just give it to them and like, this is all the context of our business, right? Since the native object understanding is so important to this task, that is why I call that one out specifically. And I can tell via the audit that it is including the knowledge base. I highlight that 6% because when you go to 7% in Claude, it starts to act like a RAG, which is a, what does RAG stand for, Ryan?
Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Right. So it would have started with, let me go look at the knowledge and see like which one is important to this audit or to this prompt. And I haven't had a lot of success, working with Claude when doing that. So I keep them at 6% so that it does always have that knowledge base.
Is that like a known fact, or is that something you discovered through your significant, years of experimentation? Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a few months.
A few months.
It was like what happened was they increased what you could put in the knowledge base and everything. I was already seeing that like the 60% mark. If you go over that, you pretty much just have one shot like to do the thing, because if you were to fill 100% of the context, it's almost all the tokens of a chat, right? And one day it went from 60% to 6%. And I was like, okay, great. Let's add more stuff in. And as soon as you get to 7%, it says retrieving shows up. And I tried to make that work and it didn't. So definitely related to the specificity of the prompt. Like if it's kind of general and I want Claude to be making that decision of what context is important, there are times, but I usually try to stay away from it. But it was a learning, like only through trying it. But this is how I know, like, You got me. You got me, Claude. I'm like the orders guy, and I'm not using the order object. That's because my portal existed before the order object was easily usable. So I have a customer order custom object that is seen, right? So there's the moments that are fun for me. Like, and I know at this point that there is a true back and forth happening. It's not just going and looking at HubSpot and reporting back. Yeah, you've got 200 of these records and this object shows up here. And like, it's actually like deriving insights from what it just discovered. And, right, this more than anything else, like, yep, you get it. Like, I don't need to think about it. I don't need to like question your judgment at this point. Of course, it references the trap and the platform, and somehow we're already at time. But the rest of this chat is like, okay, now that you understand current state, this is what I'm trying to do, right? It like, let's build this data model out. And so for the rest of this chat, right, it's taking that documentation and saying, right, so right off the bat, he does something I don't want him to do, right? So that's why this chat is so long, right? But at the end of the day, like, I was able to give Ryan like a really, really great document of the data model that was following all the principles. So that's where, like, we're going to talk about these kinds of exchanges and how we get that to show up in HubSpot, right? Moving forward. So I look forward to the next session. It probably won't be too far away from now because we're all excited to actually do this and show people what's going on. But any final thoughts, Trisha and Ryan?
I think so. I have an old boss that has been working on this so much for the last 18 months or so. And one of the things that I was really impressed by when he showed me what he was working on was like the level of documentation that he had on. It was for a specific business, but it was like, here's what a good sales call looks like. Here's our ICP. Here's, business messaging and all of that. He had everything documented in detail, and he was building everything off of a really strong foundation because he had everything documented. And I think you showed that here today as well, is that has to be the first piece. If you don't have that, you should, it's like going in and trying to fix a HubSpot portal by just starting to build stuff without doing the audit first. Like, you have to have those foundations in place first.
Yep. Documentation, so important.
For me, when I look at what we did here, I look at it from a team perspective and a context sharing perspective, because you can't do everything all at once. You have to figure out how to like strategically put together a portal with all the requirements and like a meaningful timeline. Business is still continuing. We also have the challenge that HubSpot is not what it was 2 years ago. And so a lot of the implementations that I do see and work on are trying to fix the hacks that were needed to support the business processes that existed in the past. So we're talking now realigning the expectations of how to go from old to new HubSpot. And I think that conversation is always exciting because people get their minds blown when they figure out like the data model is like more cleanly supported than it ever was before. And so quick audit, understanding where you're at, all the business context of like where you want to go, and then really a strategic plan on how to like model out the HubSpot account in a document that's not 10 tabs on a spreadsheet, that's not handed off from sales to implementation, that's not handed off from one implementer who moved on from their previous job to this. This is a conversational document, a living document with context. And I can go into this as a new person and start to actually ask questions against it to get my own understanding, which is tremendously valuable. And I don't need to rehash the conversations with leadership. I don't need to rehash the conversations with IT. It's all there. And then maybe it's one call, just I'm new. Hey, this is my understanding. Are we good? Great, let's continue. And like, I'm just stoked for the build because I know like where we want to go is like MCP and all of the actions that it can do is like, go create the object for me, go build the properties, you know, all of the fun stuff that like implementers do with their mouse, maybe can be done just from this one chat.
Yep.
That's a really good point you just brought up is this shareable? So like that would be the dream, is that you have this initial sort of work outlining, what needs to be done. And then because no one person is going to do the whole thing. So you've got now like 3-4 different people involved in it. And like, can I interact with that same set of knowledge and have somebody else attempt and how do you do that? Is it a shared account in Claude?
It's a team account.
Okay.
But yes, we will be getting into that. When HubSpot says AI first, I wouldn't be surprised if we'll be able to do stuff like this, like natively in the tool at some point in the future. So that's why it's important for me to help people with the literacy of what this process looks like. So that's where we'll wrap today. And stay tuned. We'll be announcing the next episode soon. Thanks so much, Trisha and Ryan. Have a great
Thanks.
day.
Yeah.